Hi, I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. I'm going to spend some time out here in the garage, straightening up. I've got a bunch of stuff to move and I want to get it so that I can have the lawnmower against the back wall. So I'm going to spend some time doing that. You're welcome to stay and watch. Hope you enjoy it. Medium rate flat box. Handy thing. They don't cost anything when you get them at the post office. And if you have a roll of tape, which I just happen to have a roll of tape, you can put them together rather quickly. I don't know how good this tape is at sticking anymore, so I'm not going to load it up real heavy. Well, that seems to be sticky. That's good. Put a couple extra bits on there, just make things likely to stay. There. Now I can put things in there. When I take them out the workshop, they'll be semi-stackable. When I was selling things on eBay, I used these boxes quite a bit because I sell mostly iron goods, you know, tools, something's got some weight to it. And the post office has a rule: if you can fit it in the box, doesn't matter what it weighs. I suppose I could ship lead and then get a little testy about it. Just tools, and quite often I wanted to pack them up so they didn't get damaged, so they'd be wrapped up with some foam packed in there with them, just to keep them safe, so that when I send them out to you guys, I send them out to you guys. Sometimes you guys wanted to buy something, sometimes I wanted to sell something. Worked out well. Okay, let's see. I got an oil can, jar lid, and a pack of screws. Let's put those in there. plastic creamer can. This, I have no idea what I thought I was going to do with it, but I know what I'm going to do with it. It's not asbestos, it's rubber. It's a rubber sheet. That would make a good top for a workbench, wouldn't it? Okay. That's what I'm going to do with it. I'll make a top for a workbench. That's when I went out to the carpet place. I was picking up pallets and they had a pile of carpeting because, you know, they're a carpet place and they sell carpeting, and that means that they pick up old carpeting. So I got a piece of that, and that makes a nice top for a workbench, especially when you're working on small things. They don't bounce off. If you have fairly short carpet, you don't have shag carpet, things get lost in there. But fairly short carpet, like you know, kitchen carpet, that low level loop stuff, foam back. A spring falls on that, it doesn't spring off as easy. It tends to stay there. Makes it nice for working on carburetors. Let's see if I can do this without straining. One of the problems I'm having is I'm dragging an outboard motor along with it. This is a nice little outboard. It took a lot of work to get it going. The reed valve was rusted. It's a little thin piece of shim stock made in the shape of like a daisy, little petals. So I had to take and put it on a block and sand it till I got rid of the rust and some of the pits. Some of the edges are still a little flaky. I still want to take that thing apart and try and make another reed valve. I think that's something that's doable. They're probably stamped out when they make them when they made them a long time ago. When they made them in the factory, they probably had a die that just sheared them out of shim stock. But I think if I had a piece of shim stock, I could put some wax on the top of it, and then I could scratch that wax by laying the reed on top of it, and then using that as a template and scratch around the outside with a sharp instrument. Then put some acid on it. The acid will eat through the carbon steel fairly quickly, and then you can rinse it off in water. Everywhere there isn't wax, the acid will eat away the steel, and you'll end up with a perfect little shape. So that would be something that I could try with a washer, just to say, okay, rather than spend a whole lot of time taking the engine apart, get the reed valve out, do all that stuff, I could get a washer and try putting some wax on and scrubbing it around. I have wax, I have acid, and I have shim stock. Why not give it a shot? Big old cast iron forge is heavy. Now I have a vise, part of a corn sheller, actually several parts of a corn sheller, a hydraulic pipe bender, a big 5-gallon bucket full of nails, and I think this is enough for one night. This is enough for one David. I will wear myself out and not be able to do anything tomorrow. And I'm better off than I was a few hours ago. But one last thing I want to do. I've had that socket set on that back wall. I had it in the blacksmith shop over at the old house because I had a workbench in the blacksmith shop, and I did engine repair. I worked on tractors in the blacksmith shop because it had a big door. I could drive a tractor into it. Most of the tools and parts and pieces were over in the big shop, and I didn't want to have a tractor sitting in the big shop all the time. So I would open the big door, wheel the tractor in there, and I had workbenches, and I had I forget what they call them. The kind of thing that's a beam sitting on 2 legs with rollers underneath it. Mine didn't have rollers, but it was 2 legs with a beam across the top, and I put a hoist on it. And I used that to lift engines out of tractors, engines, transmissions, anything heavy. So that was in the blacksmith shop. I also used it to move around the heavy equipment in the blacksmith shop, anything that it was too heavy to carry easily. So, get back to the main part of the story. This was on the wall behind the workbench, and I used it a lot. It was a nice situation to have. I could get to stuff easily. Let's see. Matt sent me these really cool screwdriver bits. Weehaw! Got a little clip box that they go into it and stay in there and don't fall out. This is steel banding. Denver bought steel, and they sent the steel in on pallets, banded down with that high strength steel strapping. And I said, you know, I bet I could make a solid out of that. So I said, all right, we're going to get some of that. So I did. And I retired in 2013, which was 11 years ago. Haven't done anything with it. But I'm not going to feel bad about it, because I have done a lot of different things. There's my welding bench. I've had that. I was about 15 when I built it. I'm sure I've told this story before, but I'm going to tell it again. If you get bored with it, just click forward and watch something else. My dad used to do electrical work. He'd wire people's houses and barns and sheds, and I'd go along and help. Because it was kind of fun, and I sometimes got paid for it. Not always, but sometimes. Enough times that I didn't feel bad. I would have helped him for nothing. I did help him for nothing. But occasionally, I'd get something like this. We did some work for a guy, didn't have any money. Working at the foundry, and there was a lot of people working at the foundry. Didn't have any money. And he needed to have some wiring fixed. Dad went over to look at it because he asked him a question about it, and Dad was just the kind of guy that would say, well, let's go see. He went and looked at it. He said, well, you're going to need to have some work done. And the guy said, well, I can't afford to pay you. Do I have anything that I could trade you? Because there used to be a lot of bartering going on, especially back in the 60s, and there wasn't a whole lot of money laying around. And the guy said, well, I got this drill press, and the drill press was hammered. I mean, it was one ugly son of a gun. Didn't have a motor on it. It's set on this iron base. That steel table I put on, with the iron base. Then it had a piece of pipe that came up about this high, and there was one of those old Camelback drill presses up on top of it with a hand crank, you know, that you could run the spindle down with. And that was pretty much the state of the art on that thing. It didn't have any power to the motor. I imagine the guy did some trading and got it. Traded something for it, because I think that's how he got by. A lot of us did at the time. But in any case, we brought it home, and it sat in the garage for a while, but we didn't have a drill press. And I thought having a drill press was a world beater of an idea. So I started working on it. Now I was working for Dad, helping him do jobs and things, but like I said, I wasn't getting paid a lot. But I was mowing yards. Mowing yards didn't pay a lot. Not much did. I got paid usually about $1.50, maybe $2 for mowing somebody's yard. Little 18-inch mower. They were city lots, you know, it wasn't large areas. Only had one house that actually had any size lot to it, and she babysat my mom, so family friend, family discount. Didn't mind that a bit. Her name was Irene, and she was a wonderful woman. She had to be 80 at the time. Magnets are handy things when you're working out here. So, since the drill press had a pipe thread coupling on the bottom of it. Now, it didn't originally come that way from the factory, I'm sure. I'm sure it had a tube that had a set screw in it, some kind of a coupling that held it to a upright stand. And there used to be a place in Coldwater, probably still is, might be, I don't know. Rosenberg might have retired, but he had people working for him. Maybe one of his kids took over. In any case, you could go down to Phillips Steel and buy a drop. So I went down to Phillips Steel and I bought a drop of angle iron and a drop of steel plate. And we welded a tube onto the bottom of the steel plate, or onto the back of the steel plate, put some gussets on it, and turned that into the table for the drill press. Slid that over a piece of 2-inch galvanized water pipe. Welded that 2-inch galvanized water pipe to a rectangular frame that I made up out of, I think it was 3-inch by 3-inch by 3/8 angle iron. I wanted to make it heavy. Wanted to have some weight in the base of it. And that drill press was around, well, from the time I was 15, and I finally sold it when I got the big jet drill press at Home Depot up in Lansing, and that would have been, I don't know, 2010, somewhere around there. So that was a long time. 54 years ago. Had that drill press for 54 years. It was a pretty good deal. It wasn't fancy, but it spun that drill bit and it would put it through whatever you put in front of it, and it drilled a hole straight up and down. Table didn't tilt. It would swing a little bit, but it didn't tilt, and most of the time we didn't swing it because we set the table underneath the drill bit and just slid things around so they were under the drill bit. When I got the jet drill press, that was like, wow, this is really cool, because that has an adjustable table. It's got a crank to bring it up and down, and it's pretty nice. But the old drill press, like I said, 53 years. I moved it twice. More than that. Let's see, I was living at my folks' house when we made it. Then I lived on Central Park Drive, and I moved it to the shed over there. Then my brother borrowed it and took it to his work at Dally Tire. So that was 3 moves. And then it was sitting outside. So I went over and got it. And at the same time, I got the vise and my welding bench, which had come up missing. I didn't know where it went to. So I got the vise and my welding bench, brought all those things home, and never loaned them out again. Finally ended up selling the drill press when I got the jet, because there's no point in having 2 at the time, especially since the jet was so much better than the, I don't even know who made it. There wasn't any name on it, no identifying parts, and I would never, at the time there wasn't any internet to look anything up, so I didn't bother trying to find it. But I put an ad up at Jack's Market, and I sold it that day. I didn't ask for much because it wasn't worth a whole lot, but to somebody who didn't have one, it was a drill press. Better than nothing. Okay, I'm done now. I could do more, but I think I've spent enough time out here, and I've certainly bent your ear long enough. If you have any suggestions for new video, questions about today's video, or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments. You know I read them all. Thanks for watching.
This video is not to be viewed by anyone under the age of 13 in the U.S. or 16 in the European Union without the express written permission of the parents or the legal guardians of the underage person. Such written permission must be on file at the local government entity in charge of enforcing the rules and regulations established by the FTC. Anyone violating these terms is admitting by default that they hold harmless the owners and operators of this channel. Any and all questions should be addressed to your local branch of the FTC.